at MediaFluencer, we pride ourselves on great content. Tonight on Discovery Studio, we're introducing a new debate series with some fascinating topics.
In this episode, James and Andrew will debate who is the better director, James Cameron or Steven Spielberg.
You know, there are certain debates that never really end. They just hibernate until someone brings them up at a dinner party. And suddenly everyone is shouting, Beatles versus Stones, Xbox versus PlayStation. But in the world of movies, there is one heavyweight title fight that feels almost theological.
I know exactly where you're going. It's the battle for the soul of the blockbuster.
Exactly. Steven Spielberg versus James Cameron. We aren't just comparing two directors here. We're comparing two completely different philosophies of what a movie is supposed to be. And the prompt for today is deceptively simple. Who is the best director? But as soon as you say that word, best, the whole thing falls apart.
It's a trap, because best is a slippery term. Are we talking about the guy who can make you cry over a rubber alien? Or the guy who literally invents new technology just to film blue aliens underwater?
That is the crux of it. I'm going to lay my cards on the table early here. I look at Spielberg, and I see the ultimate artist. I see a man who defined the grammar of modern cinema. His argument for best is built on consistency, range, and a sheer volume of high-quality storytelling that I don't think anyone else touches.
And I respect that, I really do. But I'm going to take the other side. If we are judging the best director of the modern era, the era of spectacle, of global phenomenon, then James Cameron is the king. He doesn't just make movies, he creates economic events. He pushes the medium forward physically. If best means mastery over the tool itself, Cameron is untouchable.
Okay, let's start with that economic event idea, because you can't argue with the math. Avatar, Titanic. The numbers are staggering. But does making $1 billion make you a better director? Or does it just make you a better businessman?
It's not just the money, though. The money is a symptom of the impact. When Cameron drops a film, the world stops. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because he understands the visceral power of the image better than anyone. Think about Titanic. Everyone knew the boat was going to sink. The ending was spoiled in 1912. Yet, he made billions of people sit in a theater to watch it happen. That is a command of the audience that Spielberg has, sure, but Cameron wields it like a blunt force instrument.
True, but let's look at the cost of that focus. Cameron releases a movie once every, 10 years? 12 years? In the time it took Cameron to make Avatar, Spielberg directed Munich, War of the Worlds, The Terminal, Catch Me If You Can, and Minority Report.
Quality over quantity, my friend.
But is it? That's my point. Spielberg's quantity is quality. That run I just listed covers sci-fi, historical thriller, caper comedy, and political drama. And they're all fantastic. Spielberg has this chameleon-like ability to shift tone. He goes from the pure popcorn joy of E.T. or Raiders of the Lost Ark to the stark, devastating reality of Schindler's List. Sometimes in the same year. That range proves a mastery of the human condition that Cameron doesn't really attempt. Cameron hits one note, really, really loud and perfect. But Spielberg plays the whole piano.
I love that analogy, but I'd argue Cameron isn't trying to play the piano. Cameron is trying to build a new instrument entirely. You talk about Spielberg's range, but let's talk about the how. When Cameron made The Abyss, he didn't just need a set. He needed to figure out how to film underwater for months without drowning his cast. When he made Avatar, the cameras he needed didn't exist. So he went into a lab and built them.
So he's an engineer.
He's an inventor. That's a crucial distinction. Spielberg is a master of the existing language of cinema. He uses the tools better than anyone. But Cameron, he changes the tools. The CGI water tentacle in The Abyss, that was the birth of modern CGI characters. The motion capture in Avatar, that changed how every blockbuster is made today. If we are defining best by who influenced the actual mechanics of the medium, Cameron wins. He drags the entire industry into the future, kicking and screaming.
I see the power in that technical innovation. I really do. But I'd argue Spielberg's innovation is more institutional. It's woven into the DNA of how we tell stories. You mentioned Cameron inventing tools. Spielberg invented the summer blockbuster with Jaws. Before 1975, summer was a dumping ground for bad movies. Spielberg changed the business model of Hollywood forever. And beyond the business, Think about the visual language. The Spielberg face, that slow zoom in on a character looking at something off-screen in awe. Every action director today is using a playbook Spielberg wrote. He didn't need to invent a new camera to change cinema. He just moved the camera in a way that rewired our brains.
That's fair. Spielberg is the establishment. He is the gold standard. But doesn't that consistency sometimes feel a bit safe?
Safe?
Yeah. Safe. Spielberg is brilliant, but he's also sentimental. He wraps things up. He gives you that emotional closure. Cameron is willing to be a maniac. There is a risk factor with Cameron that I think we have to weigh.
You mean financial risk?
I mean artistic and existential risk. Cameron bets the farm every single time. When Titanic was being made, the press was writing his obituary before the movie opened. It was over budget, over schedule, a disaster waiting to happen. And he doubled down. He commits to these singular, technologically insane visions. If Avatar had failed, it would have destroyed a studio. There's a bravado in that, a willingness to walk the tightrope without a net that I find electrifying. Spielberg, for all his genius, feels like the reliable choice. You know you're going to get a good movie. With Cameron, you're witnessing a high-wire act.
I think that's a bit of a reductive take on risk. Just because Spielberg isn't bankrupting studios doesn't mean he isn't taking risks. Making a 3-hour, black-and-white film about the Holocaust in the middle of the 90s, that is a massive creative risk. Schindler's List wasn't a safe bet. It was a harrowing duty. And look at Saving Private Ryan. The opening 20 minutes of that film deconstructed the glory of war movies forever. He risked alienating the audience by showing them true horror, not action movie horror. That requires a different kind of bravery. Not financial bravery, but emotional bravery.
That's a strong point. Saving Private Ryan did change the visual language of war. The shaking camera, the shutter speed, everyone copies that now. But let me pivot back to the audience, because ultimately, movies are for people.
Right?
You mentioned Spielberg creates cultural touchstones, and he does. E.T., Jurassic Park. But Cameron creates worlds. People didn't just watch Avatar, they wanted to live on Pandora. There was literally a psychological phenomenon called post-Avatar depression syndrome, where people were depressed they couldn't live in the movie. That is a level of immersion that goes beyond storytelling. It's world building on a God-tier level. Spielberg tells you a story about our world. Cameron transports you to a new one.
But doesn't that transport rely too heavily on the spectacle? If you strip away the 3D and the high frame rate and the CGI, what is left in a Cameron movie? Usually, a pretty basic story. Avatar is Dances with Wolves in Space. Titanic is Romeo and Juliet on a boat. The stories are simple. Spielberg, on the other hand, he can take a simple premise and layer it with such complex humanity. AI, artificial intelligence, or Munich. These are films that leave you asking deep philosophical questions, not just wondering how they rendered the water effects.
I think you're confusing simple with primal. Cameron deals in archetypes. Yes, the stories are simple structures, but that's why they travel globally. That's why a kid in Brazil and a grandmother in Japan can both understand Titanic perfectly. He taps into universal myths. And honestly, isn't that the ultimate goal of cinema? To connect everyone in the dark room? Spielberg connects deeply with specific emotions, nostalgia, wonder, fatherhood. Cameron connects with the adrenaline and the awe of the species.
So we have the master of emotion versus the master of sensation.
In a way, yes, the architect versus the engineer.
It's interesting because as we talk, I realize how much they actually need each other. The industry needs Cameron to break the ceiling, to push the tech forward so everyone else has new toys to play with. But the industry needs Spielberg to remind us why we're using the toys in the first place.
That's true. Without Cameron, we might still be filming practical effects in backlots. But without Spielberg, we might have forgotten that a special effect means nothing if you don't care about the character looking at it.
Exactly. Spielberg proves that the best directing is invisible. You don't notice the camera, you just feel the moment. Cameron proves that the best directing can be hyper-visible, where the spectacle itself is the star.
So, if you had to pick one, if you're stuck on a desert island and you have a projector?
Oh, that's cruel. If I'm on a desert island, I think I'm taking Spielberg. I need the humanity. I need to feel like there are people out there. Catch Me If You Can or Raiders, I can watch those 100 times. Cameron, I feel like I need to be in an IMAX theater to really get it. Watching Avatar on a coconut screen doesn't seem right.
See, I take Cameron, because if I'm on a desert island, I want to be transported somewhere else entirely. I want to see something impossible. Plus, maybe I can study the film and figure out how to build a raft using his engineering principles.
Laughs. You'd try to reverse engineer a submarine from a DVD of The Abyss.
I absolutely would. But look, I think this debate highlights that we are spoiled. We have lived through an era where we got both. We got the greatest storyteller and the greatest showman operating at their peaks simultaneously.
And that leads to the big question for the future. We are entering a new era now. AI, VR, interactive storytelling. The definitions of director are about to change again.
They are. And the question is, who is the model for the future? Is it the Spielberg model, where the human heart is still the only thing that matters? Or is it the Cameron model, where the integration of human and machine creates a new reality?
I have a feeling the next best director will have to be a hybrid of both. Someone who can build the code like Cameron, but dream the dream like Spielberg.
A terrifying and exciting thought.
Indeed. Well, until that person arrives, we'll just have to keep rewatching Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 and arguing about it.
Sounds like a perfect weekend to me.
Thanks for diving into the deep end with me today.
Always a pleasure to sink the ship with you.